Without my consent, my fiancé, Ethan, let his late mentor's daughter move into the home we were supposed to share after marriage. I didn't scream. I just quietly packed the bags I had prepared weeks ago and called the man I had rejected so many times before. You said you wanted to take me away. Does that offer still stand? This time, I left Ethan without looking back. We met again 5 years later at an annual industry symposium. I was the keynote speaker presenting the final award, and Ethan was this year's recipient. When the host announced my name, the entire hall fell silent. I took the trophy, walked up to Ethan, and handed it to him with a polite smile. Ethan froze, his eyes swirling with an overwhelming storm of emotions. But to me, he was just a stranger. Congratulations, Professor Vance. It took him a long time to finally find his voice and call my name. Hazel, where have you been all these years? I offered a polite smile. Getting married. My tone was cold and distant, the kind of voice you'd use with a stranger you just bumped into on the street. But inside, my heart was a chaotic mess. Ethan and I had started dating in college. After graduation, we naturally got engaged. After our engagement, we both threw ourselves into our careers. We were constantly busy and rarely saw each other. I never thought it was an issue, until he started constantly bringing up Kloe, the daughter of his former PhD advisor. Ethan never acknowledged our relationship in public, and he never allowed me to mention it either. Yet, he let Kloe hold his arm and act cute with him in front of everyone. At first, I didn't think much of it. I thought he was just looking out for his late mentor's daughter. Until my birthday, when he stood me up to help Kloe take her dog to the vet. I was furious and demanded a breakup right then and there. Ethan, who usually kept his emotions locked away, fell to his knees. He cried, begging me not to leave him. Hazel, I swear I don't feel anything for her. I only look after her because her father was my mentor. He did so much for my career. Please believe me. Don't leave me, okay? Remembering all the good times we had shared, I softened. I accepted his apology. But after that, it happened again and again. Ethan would abandon me for Kloe over and over. I was foolish enough to keep making excuses for him, telling myself it was just out of respect for his late mentor. Until his birthday. I came home early, wanting to surprise him at our new townhouse. We had agreed to celebrate his birthday there together. But when I walked in, Kloe was already there. The sofa we had picked out together was covered in plush toys. Ethan, who had always hated stuffed animals, was holding one in his hands, gently asking Kloe where she wanted to put it. In that second, I forgot how to breathe. It took me several agonizing seconds to snap out of it. I stepped back out of the door. Why is Kloe in our townhouse? Ethan brushed it off, completely oblivious to how inappropriate he was being. Oh, Kloe just started her internship in the city. It's not safe for a young girl to live alone. Since this place is empty anyway, I told her she could stay here for a while. Letting her move in? I let out a bitter laugh. Ethan, that is our future home. It's just temporary. Don't be so petty, Hazel. She's my late mentor's only daughter. What's the big deal if she stays here? I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to ask what kind of fiancé lets another young woman move into his marital home. But when I finally opened my mouth, the only words that came out were, never mind. What right did I have to complain anyway? Ever since Kloe showed up, I had stopped mattering to Ethan. The man who had once promised to love me forever, the man who swore he would never let me suffer, had given all his warmth and affection to Kloe. Whether it was my birthday or our anniversary, Kloe could drag Ethan away with a single Snapchat. I had fought with him. I had cried. But every single time, Ethan's apologies were so incredibly sincere. He kept telling me that I was the one he loved and that Kloe was just a responsibility. Time and time again, I backed down because of his sweet words. But today, seeing him let Kloe move into our home, watching her redecorate it, and seeing the tender smile on his face when he looked at her, I could no longer lie to myself. I forced a smile and fled the scene. A few days later, I went back to the townhouse to pack up the rest of my things. As I walked through the lobby, the new concierge stopped me. Excuse me, ma'am. All visitors need to sign in at the front desk. This was my townhouse. I was coming to my own home, yet I was treated like a guest who needed to register. I took the pen and signed my name, too tired to even feel angry. But a dull ache throbbed in my chest. We had been engaged for 3 years. As Ethan's official fiancé, every time I visited him at his university, I was treated like a complete stranger. I had to sign the visitor log every single time. How blind had I been to believe his apologies over and over again? With a completely numb heart, I went back to my office. The email declining my company's transfer to our London office was sitting in my drafts, unsent. I looked at the screen, staring at the paragraphs of excuses I had written just to stay close to Ethan. I laughed at myself. Without a second thought, I hit delete, typed a simple "I accept," and clicked send. Once the email was gone, I pulled on my contacts and dialed the number I had rejected so many times before. The call went through almost instantly. I was quiet for a few seconds before speaking softly. "You said you wanted to take me away. Does that offer still stand?" There was a brief silence on the other end, followed by a deep, steady voice. "Always." Although the decision to leave was made quickly, the paperwork was a headache. My company handled my visa and work transfer, but the joint accounts and assets I shared with Ethan required my personal attention. I went to the bank first, intending to withdraw my portion of the money from our joint savings account and close it. But the bank teller's response completely blindsided me. "Ms. Hazel, there is no balance left in this joint account." I couldn't believe my ears. "What?" Ethan and I had opened this account when we got engaged. We agreed to deposit a set amount of money every month to build our future nest egg. Over 3 years, it should have accumulated at least $80,000. How could there be nothing left? I asked the teller to check where the funds had gone. The teller was very polite. After looking through the records, she gave me a look of deep sympathy. "Ms. Hazel, the funds in this account were transferred last month into another joint account under Mr. Vance's name and another individual." The teller couldn't legally disclose the other person's name, but I didn't need her to. I left the bank and immediately called a friend who worked in finance to look into it. Within minutes, the details were sent to my phone. It turned out that 2 years ago, Ethan had opened a joint account with Kloe behind my back, and all the money from our nest egg had been slowly moved into that account. I didn't even know what to feel. In that moment, it felt like the entire world had gone dead silent. I floated back to our current apartment like a ghost. I pulled out my keys, but before I could open the door, I heard familiar voices coming from inside. "Ethan, are you sure Hazel won't be mad that you brought me here?" It was Kloe. Ethan's voice was incredibly gentle. "She won't. Hazel is very understanding. She'll take good care of you." My hands shook as I unlocked the door. I looked up and saw Ethan and Kloe sitting close together on the living room sofa. When Ethan saw me come in, he barely glanced up. "I have to go on a business trip with my department head for the next few days. The locks at the townhouse haven't been changed yet, and I don't feel safe leaving Kloe there alone. So, I brought her here to stay for a while. Hazel, while I'm away, please let Kloe sleep in the master bedroom. Make sure she's taken care of." He said it so casually, as if he were asking me to water a plant. I swallowed the bitterness in my throat and spoke quietly. "Ethan, do you even remember that this is our home? You already let her move into our townhouse. And now you want to hand this place over to her too?" Ethan didn't even look at me. His voice turned irritated. "Hazel, what are you throwing a tantrum for now?" Kloe gave me a timid, victimized look, her voice trembling. "Ethan, I think Hazel is upset because of me. I should just leave." Finally, Ethan deigned to look at me, but his eyes were cold, like he was looking at an annoying stranger. "Hazel, you're a grown woman. Why are you picking on a kid like Kloe?" "A kid?" I laughed bitterly. "Ethan, Kloe is your late mentor's daughter, not yours. She is 22, not 12. Have you ever seen a 22-year-old kid?" Ethan's face went cold. He stood up, shielding Kloe behind him, and glared at me. "Hazel, what is your problem?" I looked past him, locking eyes with Kloe. "My problem, Professor Vance, is that I find it hard to believe you haven't heard the rumors spreading about you and Kloe all over campus." Chloe's eyes flickered, and a faint smirk played on her lips for a fraction of a second. Ethan frowned. "I told you, those are just mindless rumors. I only look after Kloe because of her father." The resentment I had bottled up for years finally exploded. I stepped forward, raising my voice. "Her father again? Ethan, tell me, does looking after your mentor's daughter mean letting her move into our future home? Letting her redecorate it? What kind of professor abandons his fiancé on her birthday just because a female student calls?" Ethan's face turned pale with rage, but he still refused to acknowledge his behavior. "Hazel, shut up. I've explained this to you a million times. Do you have to act like a crazy, hysterical bitch and ruin my peace?" Kloe shrunk behind him, her eyes gleefully mocking me. Yet, her words were perfectly sweet. "Ethan, please don't fight with Hazel because of me. If she doesn't like me here, I'll leave. I won't stay at the townhouse either." She claimed she wanted to leave, but she didn't make a single move. She just stared at Ethan with tearful eyes. I lost my patience. I grabbed Chloe's wrist and dragged her toward the front door. "Fine. I'll drive you back to your door myself right now." Kloe struggled weakly. Suddenly, she threw her weight backward, pulling me down with her as we both crashed to the floor. Ethan panicked. He rushed forward, lifting Kloe into his arms and holding her close, his voice filled with worry. "Kloe, are you hurt? Are you okay?" Kloe clung to his chest, shaking her head. "I'm fine. Check on Hazel first. She fell harder than I did." Ethan looked up at me, but instead of concern, his hand flew through the air and a sharp slap landed squarely across my face. Smack. "Hazel, how can you be so malicious? You're jealous of a kid. You spread rumors about us, and now you're physically pushing her. If Kloe injured her hands because of you, do you have any idea how that would affect her career?" My cheek stung, but my heart was completely numb. Seeing how easily he believed her and how fiercely he protected her, a profound sense of despair washed over me. I didn't have the energy to argue anymore. "Ethan," I said, using the wall to pull myself up. "We're done. Let's break up." Ethan froze for a second, then flared up in anger. "Hazel, can you grow up? Stop using breakups to threaten me every time things don't go your way." He scooped Kloe up in his arms and walked toward the door. "Since you're going to be like this, I'll take Kloe to a hotel. Use this time to cool your head. I'll deal with you when I get back. Deal with me when he gets back." I lowered my eyes, hiding the cold finality in them. "Ethan, there is no when you get back. We will never have anything to do with each other again." 5 days later, Ethan returned from his business trip. He was still annoyed about the fight before he left. The more he thought about Hazel's petty behavior, the more resentful he felt. Yet, he had still bought her a designer bag as a peace offering. He took a few deep breaths at the front door, opened it, and placed the gift on the entryway table. "I shouldn't have lost my temper the other day. I'm sorry. But Hazel, I need you to be more mature. Stop throwing fits over nothing." The apartment remained dead silent. He didn't get the reply he usually did. Ethan looked around the empty living room, and a sudden, cold panic gripped his chest. 5 years ago, when Ethan returned to our shared apartment after his 5-day business trip, he was carrying a sleek black box wrapped with a silver ribbon. A luxury handbag he had bought at the airport duty-free shop. He had rehearsed his speech in the cab, convincing himself that he was being magnanimous by offering a peace treaty to an unreasonable woman. He opened the door with his key, stepping into the hallway, expecting the familiar scent of lavender air freshener and the low hum of the television. "I shouldn't have lost my temper the other day," Ethan called out into the quiet space, placing the box on the entryway console. "I'm sorry. But Hazel, I need you to be more mature. Stop throwing fits over nothing." Silence answered him. Ethan frowned, loosening his tie. "Hazel." He walked into the living room. The throw pillows he hated were gone. The small, handmade ceramic coffee mugs we bought together on our trip to Maine had vanished from the shelf. Puzzled, Ethan walked down the hallway to our bedroom. He pulled open the closet doors. Half of the wardrobe was completely empty. My dresses, my coats, my shoes, all wiped clean as if I had never lived there at all. On the vanity table sat a single item, glinting under the dim bedroom light, my platinum engagement ring, placed neatly on top of a formal letter of separation and a printout of our joint bank account statement. Ethan's heart gave a violent, sickening thud. He lunged for his phone and dialed my number. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." Panicked, he drove straight to my company's corporate headquarters downtown. He marched into the lobby, demanding to see me. The receptionist, who used to greet him warmly, looked at him with cool, professional detachment. "Ms. Hazel resigned 4 days ago, Professor Vance. Her transfer to the London global office was finalized, and her flight departed yesterday morning. She left no forward contact information for personal visitors." "Yesterday?" Ethan staggered back, his face drained of color. No, that's impossible. She wouldn't just leave. We're engaged." "She left this for you," the HR manager said, walking out from an inner office and handing Ethan a sealed envelope. Ethan tore it open with trembling hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper containing a copy of the bank transaction history showing $80,000 transferred to Kloe's joint account, along with 2 cold sentences, written in minute cursive. "You traded a life built on mutual trust for a leech who hides behind her father's memory. Do not look for me. You will never find the woman who used to forgive you." Behind him, Kloe walked into the corporate lobby, having followed him from his university office. She grabbed his sleeve, putting on her customary wide-eyed, innocent look. "Ethan, what's going on? Is Hazel really gone? Does that mean we don't have to hide anymore?" Ethan turned his head slowly. For the first time in 3 years, he looked at Kloe not through the soft focus lens of debt to his late mentor, but with absolute, blood-chilling clarity. He saw the subtle satisfaction in her eyes, the designer shoes she had bought with my stolen nest egg, and the complete lack of remorse on her young face. "Get your hands off me," Ethan rasped, his voice trembling with a terrifying fury he had never shown before. "Ethan?" Kloe shrank back, startled. "Get out of my sight," he choked out, clutching the piece of paper until his knuckles turned white. "Get out." 5 years later, the grand auditorium of the International Materials Science Symposium was filled with over 1,000 scholars, industry leaders, and press representatives. The crystal chandeliers cast a brilliant, uncompromising light over the main stage. Ethan stood frozen at the center of the podium, holding the heavy crystal trophy I had just placed in his hands. 5 years had changed him. The sharp, arrogant young associate professor was now an established scholar, but the years had etched permanent lines of exhaustion around his eyes. His hair was streaked with early gray at the temples. He looked worn, hollowed out from the inside, like a building whose internal frame had long since rotted away. "Hazel," he whispered again, his voice cracking through the quiet auditorium. The podium microphone caught the sound, echoing his desperate breath across the hall. "Where have you been?" I kept my professional posture, keeping my eyes clear and untroubled. "This is an industry event, Professor Vance," I said softly, ensuring my voice carried just enough authority to keep him grounded. "Please give your acceptance." Remarks. "The audience is waiting." "Hazel, please." Ethan took an impulsive step forward, reaching out an urgent hand to touch my arm. Before his fingers could graze my sleeve, a tall figure stepped smoothly out from the VIP wings of the stage. A tall man in a bespoke charcoal suit stood beside me. Julian Sterling. Julian didn't raise his voice, nor did he make a dramatic scene. He simply slid a long, protective arm around my waist, resting his hand comfortably against my hip with a familiarity born of years of profound intimacy. He looked down at Ethan with cool, gray eyes that possessed the weight of absolute authority. "Is there a problem, Professor Vance?" Julian asked, his voice a smooth, deep baritone that filled the silent air. Ethan's hand froze midair. He looked from Julian's flawless, commanding presence to the quiet, natural way I leaned into Julian's side. Ethan recognized him instantly. Everyone in the scientific and venture capital world knew Julian Sterling, the founder and CEO of Sterling Global Biotech, a man whose family wealth was matched only by his ruthless brilliance in international business. And Ethan recognized something else. 5 years ago, Julian was the man whose calls I used to reject, the powerful, relentless suitor who had quietly waited in the background, respecting my choices, until the night I called him from the ruins of my engagement and asked if his offer to take me away still stood. "You," Ethan breathed, his eyes wide with a mixture of shock and profound humiliation. "It was him." "Congratulations on your research award, Professor," Julian said politely, though his eyes remained ice cold. "My wife and I have a schedule to keep. Enjoy your evening." My wife. The word struck Ethan like a physical blow. He stumbled back a step, nearly dropping the heavy crystal award. I gave Ethan one last, polite, utterly empty nod, then turned on my heel. Guided by Julian's gentle hand on my lower back, I walked off the stage without looking back once. The post-symposium gala was held in the glass-domed ballroom of the Grand Hyatt. Soft jazz floated through the air as servers circulated with champagne trays. I stood by the floor-to-ceiling glass wall, watching the rain slick the city streets far below. Julian approached from behind, slipping a glass of sparkling water into my hand and wrapping his arm around my shoulder, resting his chin lightly against my hair. "Are you all right, darling?" Julian asked softly. I leaned back against his solid chest, breathing in the comforting scent of cedar and expensive tobacco that always surrounded him. I thought seeing him again would make me angry, I admitted, swirling the water in my glass. Or maybe triumphant. But when I looked at him, I just felt empty, like looking at an old piece of furniture I threw out years ago. Julian smiled gently against my temple. "That's because you moved on years ago, Hazel." He's the one trapped in the grave he dug for himself. Before I could reply, a agitated voice cut through the background music behind us. "Hazel." Julian's arm tightened slightly, but he didn't pull away. We both turned to see Ethan striding toward us, ignoring the startled glances of nearby university executives and corporate sponsors. He had left his trophy somewhere. His tie was loosened, and his eyes were bloodshot. Hazel, I need to talk to you. Alone, Ethan demanded, his voice thick with uncontainable emotion. Julian stepped forward slightly, placing his body partially between Ethan and me. Professor Vance, you are making a scene at a professional event. Stay out of this, Sterling. Ethan snapped, his usual academic decorum completely shattered. He stared past Julian at me, his chest heaving. Hazel, 5 minutes. Please. Just give me 5 minutes. You owe me that much after disappearing for 5 years. I looked at Ethan, my expression unreadable. I laid a hand on Julian's wrist, giving him a reassuring glance. It's fine, Julian. Give us 5 minutes. Julian looked at Ethan with deep disdain, then leaned down to kiss my cheek. I'll be right by the terrace doors. Call me if he bothers you. Once Julian walked out of earshot, Ethan stepped closer, his hands shaking. Hazel, how could you? Ethan's voice was cracked with desperation. How could you marry him? You were going to marry me. We had 8 years together. 8 years that you systematically tore apart, Ethan, I said calmly, taking a sip of my water. You didn't want a fiancé. You wanted a doormat who would finance your lifestyle and play second fiddle to your mentor's daughter. Ethan winced as if slapped. I told you 1,000 times. Kloe was just a responsibility. Her father gave me everything, Hazel. I felt obligated. Obligated to let her move into our marital townhouse? I interrupted, my tone cool and sharper than steel. Obligated to transfer $80,000 from our joint savings into an account with her name on it? Obligated to slap my face across the room when she pretended to fall. Ethan turned deathly pale. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Did you really think I didn't know about the money, Ethan? I stepped closer, looking directly into his eyes. You stole my hard-earned savings to buy Kloe designer clothes, pay her tuition, and rent her an apartment. You treated me like a stranger at your university while letting her parade around as your little princess. I was going to pay it back. Ethan choked out, his eyes shining with pathetic tears. I swear, Hazel, I was going to put every penny back before the wedding. Kloe was struggling. She was drowning in debts her father left. And where is she now, Ethan? I asked quietly. Ethan's jaw tightened, a flash of deep bitterness and self-loathing crossing his features. The truth of what happened after I left was something I had learned long ago, through mutual acquaintances, though I had never bothered to seek it out. When I left for London 5 years ago, Ethan didn't get his happy ending with Kloe. Without my steady income, my meticulous management of our household, and my emotional support, Ethan's life quickly began to crumble. When Kloe realized that I was truly gone and that my substantial salary was no longer funding Ethan's generosity, her attitude changed overnight. She no longer played the sweet, innocent orphan. She began demanding more money, insisting that Ethan buy her a luxury car, pay off her mother's gambling debts, and secure her a faculty position at the university. When Ethan refused, pointing out that he was living on a modest professor's salary and was broke after I took my half of the remaining legal assets, Kloe threw a violent tantrum. She threatened to go to the university ethics board, claiming that Ethan had traded academic favors and lab funding for her personal company, a threat that terrified Ethan, whose entire identity rested on his academic reputation. To keep her quiet, Ethan spent the next 3 years taking on overwhelming research loans, working himself to the bone, and sacrificing his own health. When his funding finally dried up 2 years ago, Kloe didn't hesitate. She packed her bags, emptied what little money remained in their joint account, and ran off with a wealthy, older donor from the university board. She didn't care about her father's memory. She didn't care about Ethan. She was simply a predator who fed on weak men who mistook her manipulation for innocence. She left me 2 years ago, Ethan whispered in the ballroom, his head bowed in utter humiliation. She took everything, Hazel, the townhouse, my savings, my peace of mind. After she left, I realized I had sacrificed a diamond for a piece of toxic glass. He reached out, his voice trembling with a terrifying, hollow hope. Hazel, I know I made unforgivable mistakes, but I've suffered for 5 years. Every night in that empty apartment, I thought of you. I kept your engagement ring on my desk. I never touched another woman. Please tell me you still think of us. Tell me there's a part of you that remembers what we had in college. I looked at him, feeling neither hatred nor pity. Ethan, I said gently, do you know why I didn't scream at you 5 years ago? When I saw Kloe redecorating our townhouse, Ethan blinked, tears spilling over his lashes.
Why?
Because you can only feel rage toward someone you still expect something from, I replied softly. That day, when I walked out of that townhouse, you ceased to exist to me as a partner. You became a stranger. I took off my gloves, revealing the flawless emerald ring on my left finger, a ring Julian had designed for me, symbolizing a love built on absolute respect, equality, and unshakable devotion. Julian never made me sign a visitor log to see him, I said quietly. Julian never hid me from his colleagues. When my work demanded long hours, he flew across the globe just to have dinner with me for an hour. He treated my dreams with the same respect he treated his own. Ethan stared at the ring, his face contorting in unbearable pain. I am not the girl who cried in your living room while you slapped her, Ethan. I continued, my voice steady and cold. I am a woman who is deeply, passionately loved by a man who would never ask me to compromise my dignity for anyone. Hazel, please. Ethan sank to his knees right there on the polished marble floor of the ballroom, oblivious to the high society guests staring at him in shock. He reached out, trying to grab the hem of my dress. Don't leave me. Again, I have nothing left. I took a step back, letting his fingers slip through the air. You had everything, Ethan, I said, turning away. You just threw it away for a illusion. The symposium ended, but the consequences of that night were far from over. Ethan's public breakdown at the gala was witnessed by several senior members of the university board and major corporate sponsors, including Julian's firm. Within 48 hours, an anonymous audit report was delivered to the university's Board of Ethics. The report, compiled meticulously over years by Julian's legal team, contained detailed evidence of financial irregularities regarding Ethan's research grants. It proved that Ethan had diverted university department funds to cover Kloe's personal living expenses and had credited her name on several major research papers she had never contributed to. The scandal exploded across the academic community. By the end of the week, the university issued a formal statement. Professor Ethan Vance was stripped of his academic tenure, suspended from all research initiatives, and placed under official investigation for financial fraud and academic misconduct. Without his university salary and facing massive legal fees, Ethan was forced to declare personal bankruptcy. The bank foreclosed on his townhouse, the place where he had let Kloe move in, the place where he had ruined our future. 2 months later, it was a crisp, golden autumn afternoon in downtown Boston. I walked out of the Sterling Global headquarters, stepping into the cool air. Julian was waiting for me beside our car, holding 2 warm cups of coffee. Ready to go home, Mrs. Sterling? Julian asked, his eyes crinkling with warmth, as he held out a coffee to me. Always, I smiled, wrapping my hand around his. As we walked toward the car, a ragged figure stepped out from behind a park bench near the sidewalk. It was Ethan. He was barely recognizable. His clothes were ill-fitting and worn, his coat frayed at the cuffs. He looked like a ghost haunting a world he no longer belonged to. He didn't approach us. He knew the security guards standing near the building entrance would tackle him before he got close. He just stood there under the falling autumn leaves, watching Julian open the car door for me, watching Julian tuck a stray lock of hair behind my ear, watching the radiant, effortless smile on my face, a smile Ethan hadn't seen in over 7 years. I caught Ethan's eye for a brief fraction of a second. I didn't glare. I didn't gloat. I simply offered him a faint, polite nod, the same nod I would give to a stranger passing by on the street, and stepped into the warmth of the car. Julian closed the door gently, stepped around to the driver's side, and drove us away into the bright afternoon sun. In the rearview mirror, Ethan Vance stood alone on the crowded street, shrinking into a tiny, distant speck until he finally vanished entirely from my sight.